This is Destination Unlocked with me, Daniel Edward.
Just about ready to depart.
Please make sure your seatbelt is not fastened and do make yourself comfortable.
Hi, welcome back to Destination Unlocked. Great to have you here with us today, where we are going sailing. We're going to be going on a brand new ship. It's just been launched by Norwegian Cruise Line, which has ships of all sizes, but they do have some pretty swish and mega ships. Their newer ones are Carnivals at Sea, if you'll forgive me for using another cruise line's name there. But really very exciting stuff. And we're joined by somebody who I've worked with for a few years in the travel writing world. We worked together at a magazine which focuses on cruising itself. And so it's a delight to have Kay Holland join us today to talk about her recent cruise experience on the brand new ship, Norwegian Luna. Enjoy. So Kay, tell us, what are you unlocking for us today?
I am unlocking, Daniel, Norwegian Luna, Norwegian Cruise Line's brand new ship, which is quite simply out of this world.
It's so exciting to be out on a brand new ship. We're obviously going to get into the details of the ship itself and take us on a bit of a ship tour and all of that good stuff. But let's start with where you actually went cruising.
Well, we flew to Miami and we boarded the ship, which is the second in the line's new Prima Plus class. And it was actually more of a couple of days at sea. And then we went to the private island, Great Stirrup Key, and then back to Miami. So short, but very sweet.
Ooh, I've not been to Great Stirrup Key. This is something that you can only go to on lines which are owned by Norwegian Cruise Lines Group.
That's right. It's a bit Marmite. It's a love it or hate it growing trend in the cruise industry, private islands. So this one you can only go to on a Norwegian Cruise Line sailing. Passengers I spoke to, there were very much two camps, as I said, Marmite. They either absolutely adored it or they didn't necessarily get the point. It is paradise, but I think it's personally a manicured slice of paradise.
Let's go through the cruise experience then. You mentioned it's one of two currently of this Prima Plus. I've been on Prima, but not a Prima Plus. Do you notice the plus?
You do. It's subtle, but noticeable if you have been on the Prima class. Everything's just a little bit larger, a little bit more spacious. They've taken all the good bits from the Prima class and just tweaked and elevated it to create this new Prima Plus class. So it's subtle, but noticeable.
What was the boarding experience like from Miami?
Very, very smooth. You know, you see everything that's happening in the news in the moment in America with airport queues and hassle. And I thought perhaps that might translate to a similar experience at the port. But no, I was on board within about 30 minutes. And then, of course, when you're actually boarding Norwegian Luna, one of the things that really stands out is this striking hand-painted hull, sort of similar to all of Norwegian ships. Each one's individual. And this one was designed by a California street artist called Elle and features the 12 zodiac constellations. And it was just stunning. I was on Aqua the previous year and I found that, no disrespect to the designer, a little bit more garish and a bit in your face. This one, Luna, was very, very tasteful.
I must say, I've never seen such a purple ship. It's all these gorgeous shades of purple. It's a stunning piece of work, actually. What a huge canvas.
Incredible. And as I said, it has the 12 zodiac constellations. I'm a Sagittarius and I was just standing there for hours looking for the archer on the hull. It was just gorgeous.
Did you find him?
I did. I finally found him.
I've got to look for Capricorn now because I've looked at pictures. I didn't realize it was the zodiacs. Now I've got to actually take a proper close look at it.
You do. And actually that sort of space feeling is being brought on board too. So there's a giant silver sculpture of the moon. I think it was on deck 8. Out at the entrance to the Ocean Boulevard. So it was sort of outside brought inside as well.
Cruise ships have become floating art galleries. This is something that a lot of lines have really focused on, these huge multi-million-dollar art collections.
Absolutely staggering. I was on Viking last September. Now, Viking is the absolute antithesis of Norwegian Cruise Line. They are like chalk and cheese. But what they do share is that commitment to art, and the art collection on Viking. They have a Munch's The Scream, everything on board. The attention to detail for art lovers is staggering.
And some lines even do a tour of their collection because they're so proud of it.
I bet you've given one.
I certainly have. on more than one occasion. So when you get on board the Luna, it's quite a large ship. So is it easy to find your way around?
It did take me a little while, I would say. Expect to spend the first couple of days exploring and getting to grips with it.
Yeah, that's certainly what I had with Prima. I found that the corridors, because they're long corridors, they do look a little bit the same. And I was starting to find clues to work out if I was going in the right direction or the wrong direction.
Yes, and it is very well signposted. You do pick it up quite quickly, but I think if you were new to cruising, you could get on board and just feel very, very overwhelmed quite quickly.
The little trick is I love the people who decorate their doors, which is a little bit of a cruise tradition. You don't do this in hotels. Can you imagine you turn up in a hotel and you start designing your door? But people do on cruise ships.
They do, and they really go to town, and some are very, very creative and individual. I really admire that as well.
For me, they're the landmarks. When you say at home, turn left at the clock tower, for me, it's if you see the door with the balloons and the this and the that, then you're in the right direction.
I'll remember that for next time.
What sort of room did you have?
Oh, do you know, Daniel, you've asked me this, and I'm just going to sound like I'm showing off and bragging. I was very, very lucky, and I boarded with 3 other journalists from the UK. Do not ask me why. For some reason, I was upgraded to the Haven.
Wow.
So I waved goodbye to them as they're all scowling at me, and I went to the Haven, which is Norwegian Cruise Line ship within a ship concept, this sort of luxurious private enclave, accessed via your own elevator. I went not to my cabin, to my suite. As you know, I live in South London. I kid you not, my suite, which was an entry-level suite, is bigger than my South London flat. I had my bathroom kitted out with toiletries, some L'Occitane. It was just unbelievable. And then also staying in the Haven, you have access to your own private restaurant, bar. And what I loved was my private, I say mine, the Haven guests private sun deck. So you're not going to the main pool and struggling to find a sun lounger. You're just this private sun deck, cocktails on tap. It was fabulous. I have stayed in a normal cabin, may I add, when I stayed on Aqua the previous year. But this year I hit the jackpot.
You must have done something very good on Aqua. They must have liked you.
I don't know how it happened. The rest of the journalists kept saying, how? Why? I don't know.
I bet they didn't get nice write-ups from the other two.
Possibly. I'll have to look them up as well.
That's amazing. I've often wondered what it's like in the Haven. I've wondered whether it's worth it, because it is more expensive, obviously, to get this upgraded area, this ship within a ship where you've got this deluxe experience behind locked doors. Did you find yourself using the full ship, or did you find yourself wanting to stay in this Haven?
I probably did spend 80% of my time in the Haven. You're absolutely correct. I think obviously I'd been on Aqua the previous year, which is the virtually identical sibling. So I sort of thought, oh, I've done the slider coaster last year. Let me stay in the Haven a little bit longer. So that probably influenced. But I spoke to lots of fellow guests in the Haven, and it was very, very difficult to leave. But I suppose the advantage is that you have that level of luxury and pampering, but you can step out and then take advantage of the restaurants or the shows on board or the attractions. But it was very hard to leave. Is it worth it? You also get with it the perks. So if you have an excursion, you have priority access to book the excursion, the specialty dining, all these passengers on board, because it's a very large ship, all these passengers on board. Hey, the Haven guests have priority booking for the Sukhothai restaurant. So there's so many perks. And when I met these fellow journalists who are probably still very annoyed with me, they said, is it worth it? And I was like, absolutely. There's no going back. And then over a drink one night in the Metropolitan Bar, which is sort of the buzzy bar on board where there's sort of live music, we collectively looked up the price. And then it's like, reality dawns. So here I am saying there's no going back. This is the way to cruise. It is 3 to 5 times the price of a standard cabin. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
Would you maybe just pay for a luxury cruise rather than a mainstream cruise line? It was quite a significant increase.
And that is my biggest question with it, because there are some fabulous luxury lines out there, which just everybody's on that luxury level. There's no two-tier system. There's no locked doors behind which a certain card doesn't allow you to go. And is that more relaxing? Or does it make you feel really special to be the one to be able to go behind that locked door?
It does make you feel special, but I think my overall take on it was, if it was me personally, I don't have children. If I was going to spend that level of money, I would probably upgrade and go to a luxury ship. However, if you're a family or you're the grandparents traveling with your kids and your grandkids too, then great. It's that sort of level of refinement. And then you can go and join them in the sort of hub and craziness of the mainstream ship when you want. So I would say I think it's perfectly set up for multi-gen travel. And maybe couples that want the luxury, but they do want that sort of glitz and glamour and razz of all the shows, which perhaps you don't get on the smaller luxury lines so much.
No, sometimes size does benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those shows are phenomenal. And I was gutted. I missed an opportunity to get out to Tampa, which is where NCL have their studios. And I was invited to go and have a look at the new show just before it went to the ship to see those final days of rehearsal. I couldn't make it. I was gutted.
Oh,
But
no.
tell me, how is the show? Because the headline show for Luna is an Elton John show, isn't it?
It is. And I think we both might be a bit biased with Elton, because before we started recording, I've just discovered we're both from the Watford area. Obviously, Elton John's a Watford boy. He's the honorary chairman of Watford Football Club. So I think we perhaps feel a bit of an affinity to Elton.
I always
So
say he's the man who named me.
I like that. But it was absolutely incredible. The headline show is Elton, a celebration of Elton John. I think when you mention the name Elton John, it's everything you'd expect, glittering costumes. And we were very lucky. We had a backstage tour and saw all the costumes close up. They had the famous baseball uniform, the rooster suit. And then the show itself had all these dazzling aerial displays, there were multi-pianos. I'd seen the Prince show on board Aqua the previous year, and this took it even to the next level. It was phenomenal. I think even if you weren't a fan of Elton, you couldn't fail to appreciate the spectacle.
And this is a show that you can only see on board the Norwegian Luna.
Yes, it is specifically devised for Luna, and that is their big headline show. I think the entertainment director was telling me it's about 3 times a week, 2 showings on those nights, and it is encouraged to book.
This is something which I found on the Prima as well, that it was the same show multiple nights because the theatre only holds a certain fraction of the guests on board. And so to give everybody the opportunity, it was something that I found very important on the first day when I got on board to go through, and they've got a box office where certain members of the crew are essentially a box office team for a while, and you can sort everything out with them pretty much straight away.
Yes, that's right. You can do. And definitely, I would say be organised, tick off all the things that you've made a list you want to do, go and get them sorted, go and get them booked. Actually, I'll share a tip that the entertainment director gave to me. I was asking him which show he would recommend. There's the 2 sittings. So there's a 7:30 and 10 p.m. And he always said, definitely the 10 p.m. because it's more of a party atmosphere. And everyone, whether it's the performers or the guests, everyone's warmed up a little bit. And he also said, if you do have a choice, to book later in the sailing.
Okay, because everybody else is trying to get in early, and so you're in for a bit of a bum fight. What is there to do then in the evenings if the main theatre is being taken up with one show for 3 nights?
There are so many bars, I didn't even get to work my way around them. And all the bars have, like I was mentioning, the Metropolitan Bar. There's live music there, there's DJ sessions, there's a champagne bar, there's a wine bar. So you can sort of work your way around all the bars. There's also a couple of other like nightclubs with other shows on. I think it was called Hiko, and it was like acrobats, lasers, 3D effects. And then when the Elton John show isn't on, there's a show that performs songs from the Eagles' back catalogue. And the highlight of that show for me was this sort of thrilling rendition of Hotel California at the end that had everyone on the feet. So there's loads and loads of, and there's the casino too, if you fancy a little flutter. On sea days, all the boutiques were open very late. There's lots and lots to do. I don't think boredom is an option. And then I met a couple that actually just wanted to have room service and watch a film in their room.
Wow. Do you know, I've never thought to do, I know there are people who do that, but it's something I have never, ever considered doing on a cruise.
No, I think you're right because I've always wanted to take advantage, but they said they'd had such a full on go, go, go day. They were tired, they were gone. I guess they were jet lagged because Miami is quite a long flight. And that was what they wanted to do. And I thought, oh, it's your holiday too.
Well, that's true. Yeah. When I used to work on cruise ships, I always wanted to pull the data of how much time are people sitting with their television on when they're on this amazing cruise in the middle of these incredible destinations. Nobody gave me access to that information, but it's being stored somewhere.
And what was your favorite ship to work on?
Ooh,
Or is that like choosing a favorite child or something like that?
yeah, it's an interesting one. I would say my favorite ship, I'd say I probably have to say two. Navigator of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean ship. That one took a special place for me because it was my first ever cruise ship that I worked on. And that's usually when you have a favourite ship, I do find it's less the ship and it's more the people that you were with and the experiences that you had on board. But that one was special. I had a wonderful team, really had a great time. Then at Holland America Line, I really enjoyed Zandam, which is one of their two smaller ships. And the smaller ships have the best itineraries. They can still get into places that the big ships don't go to.
Oh, so the ports, because of their smaller size, they can access the ports that they're large.
Yeah.
Yes, very true.
And then you realise what cruising without queuing is like.
Yeah, a dream.
It's amazing. And so more recently, I've been on luxury lines. I was on Seabourn for a bit at the beginning of this year, end of last year, going on to Explorer journeys in the Mediterranean this summer. And the smaller ships, it's a totally different experience. And they are wonderful ships.
Yes. People say, oh, cruising isn't for them. I would just say you haven't found the right ship because, as you say, there's so many different experiences and there really is a ship that would suit you.
I agree. There is a ship for everybody and there is a sea for everybody as well.
Good point.
It's a big world and most of it, I think 80% of it or something, is ocean.
Yes.
And so people who stay on land are missing this big world that we've got.
Very true.
There's a huge amount out there. And yes, on this occasion, I suppose you did what is affectionately known as a cruise to nowhere.
Yes.
But in a way, that's perfect because with Norwegian Luna, as is the case with many of these mega ships that are being put out by NCL, Royal, MSC, the ship is the destination.
That's right. And even on the sailings that they're now introducing, week-long sailings, there's always a couple of sea days because you actually need that to take advantage of the ship and enjoy all the facilities on board. They are destinations in their own right.
Is there enough space in the pool for everybody?
Well, Daniel, I spent most of the time in my own private pool in the Haven. However, for the purpose of research, I did venture out.
I love that. For research.
For research purposes, I did. It never felt too crowded. Admittedly, I was going with myself and a couple of friends. We weren't a big party trying to find loads of sun lounges. And also, there perhaps weren't as many people as I thought by the pool, just because it was a short sailing and people were trying the drop, which is one of the sort of rides on board. They were queuing to try the slider coaster. There was the mini golf, the glow court. There was so much to do in a short space of time that you'd slot in a couple of hours for your sun lounge and then on to the next thing.
If you were to equate it to a land-based holiday for somebody who hasn't tried cruising yet and is one of those people that says, not for me, not for me, what sort of land-based holiday is the most similar to your experience on the Norwegian Luna?
An all-inclusive resort. I have been to, in Jamaica, a Hilton all-inclusive resort. It reminds me very much of that. Very tasteful, very comfortable, so many activities that actually a lot of families that go there almost don't venture outside the gates to explore Jamaica. But of course you can. You could be there for an entire week and eat somewhere different every single meal time, see a show every night. I think if you're a fan of big all-inclusives, for me, it's a something for everyone type of holiday. That's what I would equate it as. If you prefer boutique hotels on land with everything very individual and you only need one restaurant, that's not for you.
Is the Haven close? Or even then you'd say,
Yes, you're right. The Haven would be very close. You could just go and stay in the Haven and dine in the Haven restaurant and go for a post-dinner cocktail in the Haven's bar, which wouldn't be out of place in any five-star London hotel. The entertainment's very low-key, just a bit of background music. I guess the Haven would be the equivalent of a boutique hotel.
so you mentioned the Haven restaurant. And actually, the amazing thing about NCL is how much food is on board. It really is quite staggering. When I was sailing on Prima, I was there for a week and I didn't have enough time to go to every restaurant on board, which is just absurd.
That is quite insane for a whole week. Wow.
There were more restaurants than dinners.
Well, on Luna, there were 17 dining options. So actually, if I think of what you're saying, it's pretty much similar. I mean, 17 dining options, you've only got a week. There you go.
So what did you try?
Well, I did leave the Haven to eat. As I said, there's 17 restaurants, 5 are complimentary, and they're actually brilliant, the complimentary restaurants. Sometimes you think of the complimentary restaurants as perhaps an afterthought. I went to Hudson's. I thought it was just gorgeous, Daniel. It had these sort of show-stopping chandeliers. It was table service. The food was absolutely fabulous. So I really enjoyed Hudson's. The other included one is the Commodore Room. Again, very, very stylish. You would almost look at it and dine there and expect it to be a paid-for venue.
What sort of food was that?
Sort of modern European, and the portions were reasonable. You didn't come away groaning or thinking you don't want to eat again that day. I'm vegetarian. I had a cauliflower steak. It was artfully done. It was just beautiful. What else can I tell you? Oh, there's a buffet venue, Surfside, which is your classic buffet. I think if you've got kids in tow or you're rushing out on an excursion, that's a good one. If you're a fan of sort of pub style grub, there's the Local. But the one that I really enjoyed, it was called Indulge Food Hall.
I agree. It really stood out for me. Tell me about the one on Luna, then I can tell you if it was similar or not.
Well, it was sort of a very big open plan venue and there were 10 stations. And it's the kind of one that, say, we could go and I want to have Spanish tapas and you want an Indian curry and I can have what I want, you can have what you want. And we order it from our table on an iPad. And then the dishes will get delivered. So each of us can have the food that we're craving, but still enjoy it together. I had the most incredible paneer curry. And it was just as good as anything I'd had at home in London. It was just phenomenal.
I really enjoyed the food hall concept. I must admit, I found it a little confusing when I first arrived because I walked in and I wasn't sure what to do. And I saw these iPads on the tables, and on the iPad, there's also a card reader. And I got confused because I thought that this was an included restaurant. Why are there card readers? It is an included restaurant, but if you wanted to get a drink, then that would go on your account or on your drinks package. And so you tap your card if you're getting a drink. But I got very confused before I got the hang of how to order. And I think it was probably just me overcomplicating things.
No, I understand what you mean. So the food is included, but the drinks, you'd need a drinks package or pay as you go for.
I was sailing on my own on that cruise. Unexpectedly, actually. Sometimes I sail on my own deliberately, and I rather enjoy it. But on this occasion, I was going to be sailing with a friend who wasn't able to get to the port.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the first time I've known someone miss a ship, but there was flooding on the way to Southampton. So I was unexpectedly sailing solo. And one of the nice things about the food hall was it was one of those venues where you could be a bit social with people that you hadn't gone with, because there are some tables which are sort of group tables. And so
Yes.
I did find myself chatting with other people there. And also in Hudson's, that was great. I used to turn up at Hudson's and they'd always ask, would you like your own table or would you like a sharing table?
Oh, great.
And I would say, oh, put me with anyone. I ended up chatting with all sorts of people. That's something I like about cruising generally, and I found that NCL was really good at it. There's a nice social environment where whether you're with people, whether you're sailing on your own, whether you started sailing with people and got fed up with them and want to chat with some new people, there are always people around that you could have a bit of a chinwag with.
Very much so. And I think NCL in particular is very solo friendly. They were the first cruise line to sort of pioneer studio cabins for solo travelers. So they do have a lot of meetups for people traveling on their own that perhaps want to meet fellow passengers.
And they've got a neighborhood on certain ships. I don't know if it's on all of their ships, but they've got an area of studios that has its own little lounge as well.
So again, you can just bump into someone, know they're sort of, pardon the pun, in the same boat as you, that's traveling alone, and you can just strike up a conversation.
If you're not going for the Haven and you're a solo traveler, I can't recommend their solo suites high enough, because you get a room which you don't have to pay that extra single supplement, which annoys so many people. But you also, that lounge means that you can avoid the crowds. Because if it's a busy day at sea inside and you're looking for a place just to curl up and read a book a bit, you've got a private lounge. It's like the Haven, but without the price tag.
How fabulous.
Yeah.
No, they've thought of everything.
They really have. So you found it pretty easy being vegetarian on board?
Yes. The only one I perhaps struggled a little in was one of the specialty restaurants. It's Cagney's.
Is that the steakhouse?
Yes, so Cagney's is the steakhouse, and they didn't have anything vegetarian on the menu. I went with a lot of devout carnivores. I guess perhaps I shouldn't expect to find something vegetarian on a steakhouse menu. However, what they said is you order off menu. The chef knew something to rustle up for the veggies. Technically speaking, had I been dining solo, it wouldn't be the most obvious choice, would it anyway? Steakhouse for a vegetarian. I also ate at Sukhothai, which is the specialty Thai one. It was introduced on Aqua. It's been brought back on Luna. It was incredible. I had this sort of gorgeous, creamy green curry. If I was going to be picky, Daniel, I would say the cover charge is perhaps a little on the steep side. So it was $50, which is what, maybe £38 per person to dine there.
And you've already paid for a meal because you've already paid for the cruise.
And as I said, the included venues, Hudson's, the Commodore, they weren't an afterthought. They were amazing. So would I pay an extra £38 per person to dine in the Thai? Maybe. I guess it depends, isn't it? If you're a foodie, you would. I was thinking, I live in South London where I have all these little local Thais on the doorstep, 20 quid a head. So it probably wouldn't appeal to me. I can't knock the food. I can't knock the service, but I just thought maybe a little bit steep.
I do find the cover charges, not just on NCL, but on a few of the major lines, very expensive. And I feel, coming from the UK, I feel like we feel that more intensely than Americans going on these ships, because I do find that the cost of living in the States is higher when it comes to food than we have. And so it might be good value for somebody else, I don't know. But we could get that same meal at a lower cost off the ship without having already paid for a meal in another restaurant on the ship, which is already included. And so it is something that sort of grates on me.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there are other people that will happily part with the cash and not bat an eyelid.
And if you are a foodie and you think, yeah, I am going to go and indulge in these restaurants, I'm going to go on a 10-day cruise with Norwegian, so I'm going to have my time to try a load of different ones. They do some packages, don't they, so that you can still have it all inclusive whilst you're on board, that you've already covered the cost.
Yes, I suppose it's like the drink packages in that way. You can buy a package which includes specialty dining, and that would bring the costs down. So probably if you are a foodie, that's important to you to try all the specialty restaurants. That is the way to go.
I went to the Teppanyaki Grill on Prima.
Oh,
that was
yes.
fantastic. So much fun. So much fun.
I passed it. It looked very theatrical.
It was. Actually, it was so theatrical. I missed the show that night. The dinner there was a little bit longer than some of the other dinners because it's a performance as you go. So, you can't rush the artist.
Nope, you can't.
What would you say was the absolute highlight for you?
Oh my goodness. I think the Elton show and the Vibe Beach Club.
Well, what's that?
It's an adults only. So if you're not staying in the Haven and you do want a sort of slightly quieter environment, or perhaps perhaps you want to avoid the patter of little feet, then the Vibe Beach Club is a very strictly adults only sun deck full of sort of luxurious lounges, those private cabanas. I think you had to buy it for a whole week, and it would have been about £185 for the week, I believe. But if you're not ready to splurge on the Haven and you do just want that little bit of an oasis, a bit like what you were saying with the studio cabins, if you're staying in those, you get the lounge. If you're not and you just want that quiet space, it was gorgeous.
One of the things that I think Norwegian has Oh, how do you put it nicely? They've done this really well, but it can be looked on as nickel and diming, depending
Yeah.
on how you feel. But there is the opportunity to buy into any experience that you want when you're on board. You want it a bit noisier, you can buy extra here. You want it a bit quieter, buy extra here. Can you get through, in your opinion, can you get through a Norwegian cruise without spending anything on board?
If you don't drink alcohol, you probably can. If you don't need your specialty coffee, which I actually don't. The queue for the Starbucks, which is very much the central hub, was insane every day with people. And I was thinking, well, hang on a minute. Wherever you have breakfast, just have coffee there included. But some people do need their cappuccino with oat milk or, and it's your holiday. Why not? You can, but I think everyone will pay a little. You can. If you don't need to send a WhatsApp home, if you're going to share all your pictures on Instagram when you get home, which is actually very sensible, right, for security, but most
100%.
don't do that, you can get away with not spending anything. However, in this day and age, most people do want to be able to WhatsApp or phone home or a FaceTime call. I'm not a big drinker, but I like a glass of Prosecco when I'm watching the show. That will cost you. I think the entry point is very, very fair. It's staggering. And I think you could get away with not spending too much extra. I think if it was me, I'd buy Wi-Fi. I don't think I'd buy a drinks package because I'm not a big drinker, but I would buy a couple of glasses each day. I could probably get away with that. If you're a foodie, no, you need the specialty restaurants. If you're a spa goer, it's not really my thing. But if you're a spa goer, you're going to pay extra for spa treatments and access to the thermal suite. So you're right, it's very, very easy for the cost to soon spiral. But if you are on a budget, you can also keep it under control if you're disciplined.
Yeah, because one of the amazing things with NCL for me is you look at their shelf price and it's staggering value. It's really great. I was looking up prices for this brand new Norwegian Luna and just looking over this summer, you can get cruises for under £500.
Yeah, which if you break that down, 3 meals plus snacks a day, entertainment, accommodation is incredible.
It's wonderful. And
You couldn't really compare that in this day and age on land at the moment.
no, it is a great value holiday so long as you're careful about what extras. If you are looking at the extras and you've never cruised before, how much do you think people need to put aside beyond the cruise fare to cover the holiday?
If you're being careful, maybe a couple of hundred, perhaps less. Again, it goes back to what we were saying about packages. NCL do this free at sea package. I think it's about £22 a person per day, but that will include premium drinks, your specialty dining and your Wi-Fi. So that's pretty good value, actually. The other thing that always, with any cruise line, pushes the price up is excursions. What I call ship-sponsored excursions are always going to be so much more costly than doing it your own way. Or if you haven't got the confidence to perhaps explore independently, and some ports, of course, don't lend themselves to exploring independently because the port is quite far from where the main attractions are, then I would look at a third-party site. Viago, there's so many now, Viator. And I think what people used to be worried about and would used to just default and book the ship sponsored ones was that dreaded fear of missing the ship. So these third party providers have basically caught on to what the cruise lines do. They now offer a guarantee they'll get you back to the ship on time. If they don't, they'll pay for you to get to the next port. So they take all the worry out of booking with them, and the prices are basically a lot more competitive.
Significantly cheaper. They really are. And often using the same guides. I mean, it's especially you go to the smaller destinations, there are only so many tour guides.
True. That is very true. Of course, there's always going to be people that would rather just book through the ship and have that peace of mind and less perhaps aggravation. But I always say do your homework.
And a lot of the time, especially on larger ships like the Luna. I say book before you go, because the people who are the most keen to get on those excursions have already booked them.
Right. I think it comes back to what we were saying about the specialty restaurants and your shows and your spa treatments. Early bird catches the worm.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
And these are things that you pick up as you cruise. The more you cruise, the more you catch on to everybody's little tips.
And you're a seasoned cruiser, and I'm doing my best to keep up with you.
Yeah. I think, yes, we're keeping the cruise lines in business. Or at least they're keeping us in business.
The wrap-up, roundup, quick-fire finish is now ready for boarding.
What would you say is the top thing to see or do on a Norwegian Luna cruise?
Top thing to see or do on Norwegian Luna, go and see the Elton show. You won't regret it. And if you're looking for a spot to have a sundowner, observation lounge. Very calm, great spot to have a cocktail and watch the sun do its incredible sinking thing.
What would you say is a tourist trap to avoid?
On the ship, probably the casino. Dare I say it?
The house always wins.
I will also just say I don't love the private islands. So I could probably just as comfortably spend the day on the ship exploring when everyone gets off at the private island.
That's a good point. What is there to do on the private island?
Well, you know what, Daniel? It's really an extension of the onboard experience. So you can relax on lounges, you can go to an adults only club. There's going to be a water park. It wasn't open when I was there, but it's opening this summer. It's a 6-acre water park. It's kind of just a bit of an extension of Luna, I'd say. For me, if that's a day, I'd rather be visiting an authentic Caribbean island, trying the food, meeting the people from that island, the local culture, rather than just an amusement park. But as I said, I met other guests that just absolutely loved it. They had their kids in tow, absolutely safe, no hassle. I am probably not the right clientele for it.
What's your favourite time of year to cruise?
Easy. January, February, March. That's because I live in the UK where we're under a dark blanket at those times of years. So I want to be sailing somewhere sunny. I actually am away quite a lot this summer in June and July, but really that's our best time of year here. So when it's cold and dark and gloomy here, that's when I want to be sailing. What about you?
I'm totally the same. I will do anything I can to get out of the UK January and February. March, I'm happy to be back. But December, January, February, particularly February, I cannot stand the darkness and the coldness, the bitter, damp cold of February.
December, I don't mind the build up for Christmas. London's very magical with the lights. But January, February, get me out of here.
What's a book or a film recommendation for people who want to be inspired by the ocean?
That iconic program, it was set on board a princess ship, Love Boat. That's what converted so many people initially to cruising. So that could be a good shout. I don't think I have any books about ocean. I'm just very much destination focused. So I'll read a book about the destination. And I'm someone that's still really old fashioned. I have a Lonely Planet guide to everything. And then I'll want to go ashore and I'll have all my little things starred. I'm more of a non-fiction destination person.
Me too. Lonely Planet is one of the companies that does cruise-specific guides if you're cruising in an area which is very well served by the major lines. So really the Caribbean and the Mediterranean both have a cruising guide for those areas, which sort of focuses on what can you do in 8 hours.
Yes, they do. A Cruise Critic are a very good one. You just look at those. The Telegraph, there's so many ones with cruise ports. And I think most of the cruise lines own websites. What you can do in 4 hours, what you can do in 8 hours, what you can do if you've got an overnighter. So they're all good resources.
What would you say, back to the Norwegian Luna, was your best food or drink experience?
Best food or drink? I am going to go for the included one, Hudson's. Absolutely loved Hudson's. Honestly, I could have eaten at Hudson's every day. I really could have done. The menu changed every day. It was phenomenal.
And that's their equivalent of the main dining room. They don't call it that, but it is.
That is their equivalent, the main dining room. And the staff was so smiley and on it. The service, the food, I can't rave about it enough. For a drink, I'm going to go back to my Haven bar. A little quite oasis, the Haven bar. And when I wanted something livelier, I did like the Metropolitan.
Something about the Haven Bar, in case people think they can trick the system, because invariably you can't. If you've got grandma and granddad, and you've got your kids and you've got their kids, and you think you'll be able to bring them all in for a drink in the evening, you can't.
Sorry to dash your hopes, you can't. You have to be staying in the Haven. Doesn't matter if you know someone in the Haven or your best friend or your family members there. Doesn't matter. You need a pass yourself to be able to get into the Haven. That's why it stays exclusive.
And they're very strict about that.
They are very strict. I didn't even try to sneak everyone up.
And they know you didn't try. Final question. What would you say is a great souvenir that you can pick up on board the Norwegian Luna to remind you of your trip?
Oh, I did get given, and I'm pretty sure it's in the shops too, a bag made out of towels. It's a blue towel, and then you just sort of unfolded it, and then you had it on the private island as a beach towel. And then when you finished, it folded up and made a bag again. It was great.
That is a very clever design for everybody apart from people who read books. Because by the time you're putting your soggy bag back together,
then your
book won't survive. But I love the idea because...
Well, maybe you need another bag within it. You know, like a plastic bag within a bag, a ship within a ship.
Yeah. Kay Holland, travel journalist, thank you so much for unlocking Norwegian Luna for us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Daniel. Really enjoyed it.
Well, there you have it. A brand new ship, Norwegian Luna. Thank you very much again to Kay Holland for unlocking that for us and sharing all of her tips from her inaugural cruise on that brand new one. If you've ever been on an inaugural cruise, I'd love to hear from you and your experiences as well. And if you are heading out on Norwegian Luna over her first season, drop me a message and let me know what you think of it after you've been. Well, if you haven't already, double check that you have followed the Destination Unlocked podcast, wherever you're currently listening to this episode. That'll make it nice and easy for you to get back the next time you want to armchair travel somewhere lovely. I look forward to it, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.